Hi, and welcome to What's the Tea in L&E. I'm Leah.
And I'm King.
And King is one of my colleagues and one of my great mentors. And King, today I wanted to have you on the show to talk about this idea that, most companies, whether they're for-profit or not for-profit, have missions, right? They exist for a reason. They have a purpose. And so what do they do? What kind of tools does an employer have when, let's say, an employee's beliefs conflict with that mission? So I'll give you the example of, I'm a company and I am a substance abuse counseling center, and I have an employee who's out there advocating for legalization of drugs.
So ordinarily, an employer, because we have employment at will, can choose to terminate an employee, can choose to hire an employee or not. And that freedom really gives that employer a lot of latitude in a situation like that to say, this person's doing things that are not consistent with our mission, and we're going to terminate our relationship with this person. And sometimes you will hear employees complain, well, what about my right to free speech? But that's really more something that applies to the government, not in the employment context.
Free speech is the government's infringement on your speech. A private employer can say, no, you can't say those things here.
Right. And so I think under your fact pattern, ordinarily the employer has that right to choose not to continue to employ somebody.
So if I'm Wonder Bread and my mission in America is to make sure that every family has 2 pieces of white bread every single day with their lunch, then if I've got an employee out there advocating that people shouldn't eat gluten, then it's fair game for me to say, yeah, this isn't the right fit, right?
It seems like a bad fit. So you think the employee might not want to be there either. But that employer, Wonder Bread, has the right to say, look, this is contrary to our mission and we're just not interested in continuing to employ you.
All right, now what about a situation, a little bit of a twist, where the employee has some rights too, right? A different example. I'm an employer and we provide abortions to women. And I've got an employee who's pro-life and is advocating against abortions. Now, what do we do? How does that impact it, right? Because then we have an employee with religious rights.
Yeah, and that's ordinarily part of the story with that situation, and so that brings us to a case where the employer has some rights, but so does the employee. The employee has this right to get a reasonable accommodation for their religious beliefs, and so the employer has to take that into consideration. And the really new twist in this is that some employers are coming back to say, well, we have a First Amendment right here as well to express our mission and to carry out our mission, and that should mean that we can make choices about employees that even may run into Title VII, and that their argument is that ought to mean that the employer can still terminate that person.
So a company, like an entity itself, having free speech and freedom of association rights.
Yeah, that's right. And so, oftentimes there is some sort of, mission of a nonprofit or something like that that's associated with this. And it's not ideological. It can be, the exact opposite way on the issue you just mentioned, where it's a pro-life organization and a pro-choice employee, where the employer is saying, we get to have the right to choose our employees.
So it might not be as easy as the Wonder Bread situation, right? So just keep in mind it might be if it feels like the employee might have some rights as well, whether it's to an accommodation or some sort of anti-discrimination rights, then it might be a trickier question, right? And if that example, the employee is just discussing their personal beliefs in the break room with a coworker, you might have less strength on your position as the employer than if that employee is actually refusing to carry out their job duties because of their beliefs. So, well, thank you so much for joining us, King, and until next time.